little fireside chat.
Yes.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you to all of you for being here today. Great crowd. Can't see anybody. The lights are completely in our face, so I'm assuming there are people. And welcome, Daniella.
Thank you.
All the way from Philadelphia.
Yes, all the way from Philadelphia.
Fantastic. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Let me first say we are so excited about the LiveRamp partnership. We announced it at the beginning of May. We are the exclusive provider of LiveRamp technology, products, and services for Canada, which is huge, a real game changer for Canadian marketing. And in fact, we've had more than 65, somewhere in that neighborhood, client, agency meetings in that time. So obviously huge enthusiasm, momentum with our clients and prospects. So fantastic there.
Feelings mutual.
Excellent. As Rupert mentioned earlier, what we're talking about now, what we really want to talk about here is data collaboration, those magic words that I'm sure the attendees here have heard, but maybe don't fully understand. But it's that concept of securely sharing first-party data to reap the benefits without actually sharing the data with each other, without compromising privacy. And as the Forbes Technology Council put it, as per the slide behind us, it's really the collaboration, it's the currency of progress, right? It drives growth, it drives innovation.
Sure does.
And from a marketing and ad perspective, I guess it's what's so exciting is it really does deliver on what Scott was talking about earlier. It really, at the end of the day, is about marketing effectiveness, whether it's better audience targeting, whether it's activation and that connectivity, if it's about measurement and certainly attribution, right, which is what everybody's looking for. So, it leads to, being able to connect with the right consumers, optimize media channels, and fundamentally get a better return on your ad spend, right? So it's what advertisers want, the brands want, it's what agencies want, it's what the platforms are looking to do. We hear it, and we've heard it for years and years. But the reality is, we're at that point now where we're doing this. We are doing it for innovative brands. We need to be doing more of it.
Sure.
Right? So let's unpack this a bit, and let's start this from the beginning. And so we're hearing more about the importance of it as part of a marketing strategy, but many of the attendees here today may not understand the concept of what we're talking about in data collaboration. Maybe you can speak to what it is at a higher level and what are the market factors that are sort of driving that.
Absolutely. So at its most simplistic form, the way that I think about data collaboration is really a capability that gives you access to data that you haven't had access to before. How many times have you run a campaign with a publisher, be it a digital media publisher, social media, be it a CTV publisher, and you think to yourself, if I could just get access to that data and apply my own measurement or apply my own models to that, what could happen? If you're a brand and you want to connect with another brand and do some co-marketing, we've had some of these capabilities. I used to work at a company called Axiom, and we used to do this in a managed service way, and it took us months and months. It sometimes would take us years to get the ability to do some level of co-marketing. Right now, with data collaboration and the capabilities that exist in the market, you're speeding that up, and you're applying technology to that. So at the end of the day, what it is, it's about getting access to data that you haven't had access to before in a privacy-safe way that protects everybody involved. But as you said, Evan, it's about unlocking marketing effectiveness, right? How you can better partner with your publishers to drive more effectiveness with your media spend. How you can work with your partners to uncover new consumer insights that you haven't had before. And lastly, it's unlocking new revenue streams, right? When you think about how you can share this data in a privacy-centric way that still protects the consumer and protects everybody's brand, which I think is exciting.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's what we're all looking for.
It is. I also think, though, I talked about privacy. There are three things that are really important when you think about this. One is the right partnerships. You can't go about this if you're not thinking about who your really big partners are and how you can complement each other with data and share data. The second thing is having the right technology. Has anybody ever heard of a clean room? Raise your hand if you've heard of a clean room. Okay, I think half of you are lying. That's all I'm going to say, because only half of you put your hand up. Most of you have heard of it. But so you need to have the right technology. But just having a clean room doesn't necessarily protect you from a privacy standpoint. And so I think part of the power of the partnership that we have with you guys is that we both also come to it from a very consistent point of view around how to protect privacy and protect consumers, right? And kind of protect consumer consent, and also at the end of the day, protect the brands that we're working with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Including our new ISO 31700 Privacy by Design designation,
That's right.
which we are the second company in the world to receive. So we're pretty
Cheers.
thrilled with that. So
Yeah.
So and what is driving
Yeah.
data collaboration? Why now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on. One is, we heard earlier about fragmentation. The reality is the fragmentation is everywhere. And I feel like the market swings back and forth between consolidation and fragmentation. You know, like, so you have data fragmentation. Data lives everywhere. You have consumers are engaging with more channels than they ever have before. So you have fragmentation, and consumer experiences are changing as well. You also then have all of the privacy legislation and regulation that's constantly being talked about. And listen, we all kind of tap dance around it. We heard about best practices and things like that that you can apply. And lastly, there's a massive investment in first-party data. The investment in first-party data in a lot of cases, isn't necessarily new, but I think the application and how people are managing that data is changing. And with all of that, the reality is this: you cannot do it alone. You will never have enough data on your own to be able to know what you need to know to be able to deliver on your deliver on a heightened consumer experience. And so the fact that you can't do it alone means that you need to bring in other partners. You need to bring in partners like EA. You need to look at your partnerships, whether it is social media, digital media, CTV, whether it is other brands, whether it is a commerce media network. Like, you need to look at all of these partnerships that you have and figure out how to best leverage data to then be able to deliver on your consumer experience and ultimately drive your effectiveness.
So really part of a forward-thinking, privacy-friendly, but also data-friendly strategy, and part of your overall marketing strategy to be able to do that.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it still remains a pretty broad term, right? It's a broad term when we talk about data collaboration, and there's actually a number of different types of use cases that can fall under the broader term. Can you just touch on a few of what those cases are, the applications, and then maybe a couple of client examples and what the outcomes are of those?
Absolutely. What I would say is I think there were two things that really kind of accelerated data collaboration. One was cloud kind of coming in, and the other is commerce media or retail media networks. And the reason I say that is because if you think about what retail media networks want to do is they want to be able to share their data in a way that actually gives the brand more insights and that they can spend more with that media network and really drive heightened results. The reason I bring that up is because I think the first one that we have, I'm going to just steal a look back here really quick, is one of the things that we talk about on the retail media network side is the power of finding new customers for a brand. So if you're a retail media network or if you're a brand, like sitting down and being able to get access to data that retail media network can now show more power and new customers that brand wouldn't have had they not gone through that media network, right? I think that's incredibly exciting because it's not just about sales. If you're a CPG, if you're Unilever, right? Great that the sales are important, but it starts to get really interesting when you start to find new customers, as an example. So there's things like that we see. I think the other thing that we see all the time, if you think about a Pinterest or a Spotify, being able to really understand media performance and then building audiences that are now not just based off of your data, but based off of the insights that you're getting from that partner becomes really, really critical to a media strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about, you were talking about media activation, so commerce media, retail media, even just straight single channel media activation, but there's also that use case where, you might want to have two brands trying to understand whether or not there's a good fit for co-marketing purposes.
Absolutely.
And in fact, we have done quite a lot of that and that's where a clean room really comes into play, where again, you get that secure sharing of data.
Absolutely.
You benefit from the insights of the data that come out at an
Absolutely.
aggregate level. And in fact, we have done that in the Canadian market where between a couple of very well-known retailers that obviously for confidentiality we can't mention, but we saw a very, very high match rate between the two customer databases. We saw a very strong match between the matched data as it correlated to the higher value tiers, which suggested a really good fit for a transaction which actually subsequently took place. So it was really exciting to see that actually come to fruition. How about some of the other types of metrics in terms of media, for example?
I was saying, like on the media side of it, I think we see across the board just higher response rates, but really when you look at it, it's really about better media effectiveness. I think one of the most exciting things is really being able to systematize, if that's a word. I'm not really sure if it is, but we'll say it is. The ability to do real closed loop measurement and be able to actually look at media based on either foot traffic, meaning somebody came into your store and bought something, or they went to your website and bought something, or they took whatever that transaction is. If you're working in financial services, or it's more about have they filled out an application, whatever it is, a lot of times the media is very separate from the transaction that happens. And being able to pull these together and really drive closed loop measurement, I think is incredibly exciting. Again, you can do it at scale now, and you can do it based on other people's data, which I think is incredibly exciting.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, we've talked about this exclusive relationship that LiveRamp has with EA, which we're, again, excited about. What is LiveRamp really bringing to the partnership?
Absolutely.
Tell us about the products and the technology.
What I would say, there's four things that we're bringing. One is identity, and identity is really about how can we connect the ecosystem, but connect it with responsibly and with accuracy, and doing that both at an individual or household level. And I think when we think about identity, that's really critical, because you want to have a level of confidence that the people that you're connecting with or that you're targeting are actually the people that you intend them to be. The second is technology. So I asked about clean room capabilities. And really, LiveRamp has what we call a data collaboration platform, and a component of that platform is a clean room capability. And that is critical because you need to be able to have that safe place to be able to share data and have all the rules built in. So think about it like this. The technology is important because if you are a brand and you have a set of rules and you're working with someone else that has another set of rules, you need to agree on what those rules are. And you can't just do that contractually. You need to be able to enforce them from a technology standpoint so that you don't just give somebody the keys to the kingdom and they go out and use and abuse your data. Not that anybody would want to do that, but there's always that risk. So how do you apply the right technology to that to be able to apply it? Connectivity. Connectivity is massive. You will hear us talking about this all of the time. And when we think about connectivity, what this means is your ability to do really a couple of different things. One, you need to have a flywheel of partners that you can connect with. And two, you need to be able to activate that data wherever it is your consumers are. And in order to do that, you have to have a connected ecosystem to be able to reach those consumers and connect all of that. And then the last is measurement. How do we drive the outcomes? How do we partner with EA to drive the outcomes and have the right tools for you to be able to then really drive and understand the insights and what's driving effectiveness?
Outstanding, outstanding. And of course, a key question that I'm sure a lot of our attendees here today, they work with us through a lot of our core business around ingesting data, using those data for insights, for location intelligence. Can they continue to use some of those valuable data points, whether it's Prism segmentation, whether it's some of the great data from Viva Data or from Numeris, in this whole data collaboration ecosystem?
Absolutely. I want to harken back to a slide that your Chief Client Officer shared earlier, where you said it wasn't a pretty slide, but it's a very effective slide, I will tell you that, where it said first party, second party, and third party. That's really the power of what we're trying to do. When I say you can't go alone, right, just by marrying, let's say, your first-party data with or connecting your first-party data with a partner's first-party data, that's still not going to give you all of the insights. And it's not just the insights. There's also best practices that you guys bring so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? And so being able to apply that, and that's really, to me, is the holy grail, being able to bring all of that together in a privacy-compliant, privacy-safe way that protects everybody's rules around the data and the application of that data.
Fantastic. Well, I think that'll be music to a lot of people's ears to know that that data and all that work that's being done already can be fully leveraged. So without getting too technical, you know, you talked about the identity solution, and that at the center of that is the RAMP ID. That is the connector. So, you know, if you could just quickly talk about what is it, how does it work?
So I am not going to go through the slide. I'm going to talk about it in the most simplistic way possible because that's the only way that I can do things. Think about every partner that you work with has a different identifier. Is that true? Every time you guys are working with someone, it's like, wait, what does this ID mean? How does that map to this ID? And on top of it, you have your own customer ID that you're trying to work with as well. And at the end of the day, what RAMP ID has done is that we have gone out and think about it as a Rosetta Stone. So as a pseudonymous, privacy-first, kind of durable identifier that goes out, and what we base it off of authentications, but we've created the partnerships across the board so that as you bring data together, we can translate all of the identifiers back to a RAMP ID. So that way you have a single identifier to be able to connect from. And then as you try to activate out, we can translate that back into the identifiers that you need to use to activate. So whether we're taking the 25 different identifiers that represent me and bringing them back to a single RAMP ID, or if we're taking the single RAMP ID and then pushing them out to all of the different partners that you have in their own identifier, that is, at its core, is what RAMP ID does. And it's critical for like collaboration because at the end of the day, if you don't necessarily want to share data in a way that's going to share too much information, and you don't want to share Daniella to Daniella, right? What you want to be able to do is share data in a way that protects everybody's privacy, that protects everybody's data. And RAMP ID is really the critical component for doing that.
Perfect. And so, you know, as we've been talking about, it's really, what we're talking about is a media connectivity, media effectiveness identifier to do that kind of resolution and create that level of transparency in the market. And again, we are not using, as has been done in other markets, an identity graph per se. So we're not using that, so there's no issue, as Jan talked about at the outset. You know, privacy is absolutely at the top of our list when it comes to looking at any type of data, and as many of you know, identity graphs are not part of the Canadian ecosystem. We are not using LiveRamp's identity graph.
That's right.
It's really just that fidelity as it connects the demand side to the supply side. Okay.
Yep.
So how heavy is the lift to get into data collaboration? How you know, I think a lot of people are saying, well, what's the effort involved? It sounds like there's a lot of great potential for marketing effectiveness. I can get the results I want. What do I need to do to get there?
I think it can seem overwhelming. So when you think about like the vision of data collaboration, it is literally for you to be able to create this collaborative flywheel that you can get data as you need to based on the different partners. And when you start thinking about all the nuances that go into that, it can seem overwhelming. The reality is, though, I think like getting into, like we were talking about POCs or crawl, walk, runs, there are things that you can be doing today to get on the path for data collaboration that don't require a massive change in what you're doing today. So the lift can seem heavy, but don't think about what the most complex use case is. Think and start simply. Pick a couple of partners. Think about it from a media standpoint and think about who are your biggest partners. Who has data that you think would be really complementary to what you have? Start there, and it doesn't have to be such a big lift. And you can start small. You can start with 1 or 2 partners, and you can do it with a couple of different campaigns, and you can start to see what the impact of having access to some of this data can do for you.
Fantastic, yeah. And as the slide behind me shows, there's lots of different options. These are the 3 key ones. There's always going to be more options, but we're here to work with you and make sure that we can help guide you through this process, including through a range of proofs of concept based on a lot of the proofs of concept that we've already done. So we're happy to help. Okay, 2 more quick slides and quick questions that we're going to have to motor through. I think we're up against some timeline crunches here, so we need to get to the client sessions as well. You've done this a long time, and the U.S. market is obviously very advanced in this space. What gets you most excited about the potential out there? And if you could leave words of wisdom with the audience today, what would those be?
So what I would say, what I get most excited about is that we are scratching the surface of what this can do. And the reason I say that is because even though in the US we've been doing this for a while, it is still nascent. It is still nascent in the US. People are still we're still learning and figuring things out. And so I think about it in the US, but globally, we're all in this kind of nascency together. So I get excited about the fact that we haven't even uncovered the real power of what this can do yet. And I think that's an incredibly, we have customers that are testing out they are basically, through data collaboration, partnering with other brands, and they are learning, they're refining their models, their analytic and their models based on other data that they don't have access to. And then they're applying it to their own data. And I think things like that's really exciting, and we're just starting to scratch the surface on what's available.
So I'm going to bring it back to the first slide, because I think really, this is what jumps out to me is, and we've heard this, if you've been at any conferences recently, and Scott said the same thing. It's all about less talk, more action. We as Canadians talk a lot. We've been talking about this, if only we could do this measurement, if only we could get to return on ad spend, if only, well, as David said at a conference last week, well, you can do it. It's here now. We are doing it. So I would say, time to pony up and get going, right?
Pick
get on the journey.
a partner or two.
Right.
Figure out a partner or two that'll go on this journey with you, because it'll be a hell of a lot easier, and just start somewhere.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much.
Of course.
Thank you for all your inputs. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, it was lovely being here.
Further conversations. We have our demo at our Solution Center today at 12:30. Please come by. We'd love to talk to you, talk about your use cases, and as I said, let's get started on this path. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Evan.